Do you think that if you were falling in space, that you would slow down after a while or go faster and faster? Faster and faster. For a long time, you wouldn't feel anything. Then you burst into fire.
Welcome to the Rewatchers in the Lodge. We are back to talk about more Twin Peaks. This week specifically to talk about the Twin Peaks movie Fire Walk With Me, written by David Lynch and Robert Engels and directed by David Lynch, released in 1992, June 1992. And here to talk about it today, I'm Tyler Harris, here with
Mitchell Marshall
and Tyler McKinley
and Justin Hammer.
Little short-staffed tonight.
Skeleton crew tonight.
Yeah. But
you scared everyone away warning about this movie.
Oh yeah, Marcus, who's never mentioned anything about being in a show, quote unquote, is now has a show tonight. After all these warnings from Tyler.
So hopefully, I mean, if you're still here, good for you. Good for you? I don't know. If you watch the movie and you're here, hopefully we can talk about some things you want to talk about.
Consider this therapy.
Yeah. If you were too scared to watch the movie but just wanted to hear what we had to say about a movie you hadn't seen, Mitchell is here to cover every moment of this movie. I am excited to hear what he has to say.
I'm gonna try.
Here we go.
TV smash, woman screams, 2 prostitutes get arrested near a school bus. Gordon shouts about death in Portland, Oregon. Jack Bauer gets the glad hand. Lil makes a sour face and various other body language codes. Deer Meadow Sheriff doesn't want to see Agent Desmond, who proceeds to nose wrestle a deputy and get info about the grumpy sheriff. The entire office furniture included is probably about $27,000. During autopsy, they find out Teresa Banks died of blunt force trauma and has a letter under her fingernail. They go to Hap's Diner where Teresa worked. Her coworker says she snorted the Lord's nose candy and had a numb arm. In Teresa's trailer, they find a photo of her wearing a ring. A creepy cripple lady creeps up and creeps away. Teresa's body gets loaded back up and taken to Portland. Agent Desmond finds her ring under a random trailer. In Philly, Agent Cooper is concerned about a dream he had, and David Bowie walks by like a ghost. Albert's around. Jeffries is a crazy person. In a room are Mike, Little Red Dancer Man, the crazy old lady, and grandson from Meals on Wheels, a long-nosed hopping guy, and a monkey. Bowie may have gone crazy in the Black Lodge. He wasn't there ever, but he was on camera. Agent Desmond is now missing. Cooper heads to the trailer park and finds where the trailer was finds that trailer where the ring was under, but the trailer is gone and belonged to the trailer apparently belonged to the old lady and her grandson. Laura walks to school with recast Donna, does a little snow before first period. Bobby smooches glass. James broods and tells Laura they are in love. She be like, yo, quit being so thirsty. I'm out as soon as possible. Gobble, 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 gobble. James gets to second base. Laura uses witchcraft to calm Bobby down, and he dances away backwards. Donna tries to pry into Laura's night's plan and admires James while lamenting Mike's literary ability. Laura finds a page ripped from her hidden diary. She tells Harold Bob stole them and has been having her since she was 12, and he wants to be her or kill her. Harold agrees to hide the diary, and they smooch. Cooper tells Albert he believes another kill is coming. He describes many accurate but generic elements of Laura. While loading up Meals on Wheels, Laura sees the old lady and grandson. They give her a painting and tell her a man with a mask is under the fan going towards the hiding place. Laura goes home and Bob is in a room. We get to see very deep into his throat. Hiding in a bush, Laura sees her father come out and realizes Bob is Leland. At dinner, Leland waits for Laura and orders her to sit down before criticizing how dirty her nails are. He interrogates her about her best friend, Nicholas. Sarah Palmer is fearful and confrontational. Leland, back in control, cries and tells Laura he loves her. The door in Laura's new painting leads to a house with the old lady and her grandson. The ring Desmond found sits in the Black Lodge. Cooper is there with the little red dancing guy who says he is the arm. What? Laura wakes up to numb arm next to dead Annie. She says Gooddale is in the lodge and can't leave, and to put her into the diary. Now Laura has Teresa's ring. Then she walks through the house in the painting, sees herself asleep, wakes up, and the ring is gone. Abusive, conscious Leo is back. Bobby calls. He wants more drugs, but owes $5,000. He then calls Jacques, who says he needs $10,000 from Bobby. Laura is swagged out and pre-gaming when Donna arrives, only to get ditched. At the bar, Log Lady gives Laura some cryptic words of wisdom. Laura cries and smokes to battle loud lounge music. Jacques sends over a couple of dudes who want to purchase her sexual services. Donna tries to save her but is rebuffed. Laura makes out with stranger perv number 1. Donna joins in and does the same with number 2. In freewheeling Canada, Laura makes out with Jacques. Fart and muffin dialogue ensues. Beer is chugged. Topless dancing scares Donna, and one old Jack's friend of Laura's tells her and pervy Jack that Teresa Banks has been dead for a year. Laura is getting her carpet cleaned when she freaks out seeing Donna start to get extra frisky without her shirt on. The next morning, she tells her she doesn't want Donna to be like her. Alien Mike, in one-arm form, pulls up to yell at Laura and Leland in the middle of some road in some town. Leland or Bob was hooking up with Teresa. Laura screams at Leland about who Mike is. Leland had paid Teresa to have an orgy with her friends till he found out that one of them was his daughter. The creepy grandkid in the mask is just hopping around the street. Laura asks Leland about going home during the week, and he says he had a bad headache and went home to get aspirin on Friday. Flashback, Leland kills Teresa with a pipe in the trailer. Laura hits the blow before making plans to meet Bobby later that night. In the woods, they go ham on that angel dust. Jacques' homie shows up with a big old back, the white nose rocks. He pulls a gun, and then Bobby shoots him first 3 times. Laura's got the chuckles while they try and cover the body. In the morning, James comes to see what Laura's been up to, and she ghosts him right to his face. Right before bed, Laura bumps some lines, and Leland turns on the fan. Sarah sees the white horse in her room. Bob comes in Laura's window and rubs his face up and down her body while she sleeps. She wakes up and asks who he is many times while then having an orgasm. Then his face turns into Leland and she screams bloody murder. In the morning, she is shook and Leland seems confused. Laura cries throughout school and kisses Bobby to try and get some of that sweet nasal nectar from his supply. High as hell, Laura tells James she loves him and will meet him in 15 minutes. James picks her up and Leland Bob sees them drive off. In the woods, James tries to get deep and Laura smacks him and tells him he's a naive little bitch, then kisses him. And she's going all Orphan Black on us, speaking as a different character every other sentence. She hops off the bike mid-ride home, confessing her love and running into the woods. Jacques, Ronette, Laura, and Leo head to the cabin for a little orgy time. Jacques ties Laura up, and she's not a fan of the kink. Leland watches from the window. I'm not a fan of that kink. When Jacques comes out, Leland knocks him out. Leo leaves without untying Laura or helping Jacques. Leland and Laura scream at one another, and then he takes her and Ronette somewhere. One-armed Mike tries to follow them and find them. Leland Bob ties them up in the train car. Bob is Laura. No, he's Leland. Ronette gets untied. Mike opens the door, and Bob hits Ronette till she falls out unconscious. Mike still can't get in through the door. Laura put on a ring. Bob Leland beats her to death and wraps her in plastic and puts her in the river. He goes back to the Black Lodge, where Mike and the Little Red Dancing Man await. Bob stands and Leland floats. Mike says he wants all his pain and sorrow. Mike throws some blood from Leland to the ground. Laura's body washes up. Laura and Cooper sit in the lodge. The angel, who was also in the train car earlier, appears, and Laura just laughs. And I have no idea what the hell happened in that whole movie, even though I just read, all of that.
A lot happened, I think.
I think you did a pretty good job. I felt like emotionally, I felt the same things going through your description. I was like, I started out in your beginning being like, oh man, this is great. And then towards the end, I was like, oh man, I feel like shit.
Good.
Yeah, how are you guys feeling after watching this movie? Just initial reactions, because we literally just watched it less than half an hour ago.
I feel like I need to take a shower with my eyes closed because I don't want to view my naked body with anything remotely close to that movie in my head.
I mean, yeah, I was kind of ready for it. It's a bunch of disturbing weirdness. And I think because I'm so interested in the myth behind it, that helped me not think too much about I was focused on that and the story as much as I was the emotion. So I didn't let myself get invested. Not that disturbing stuff doesn't have the effect regardless. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I was just trying to think of different words to say cocaine with. So
yeah, those were some good ones. Also, getting her carpet cleaned.
Yeah,
jury's out on that one.
No, you didn't.
It's
okay.
Horrifying, and I like it. I don't know. It's weird.
Basically sums up how I feel about this whole movie. Horrifying, and I like it.
Yeah,
but honestly, I feel like this is the kind of shit that we as a human race need. I loved this, by the way. I thought this was an incredible movie.
Good, yeah.
Mainly because of its look into some really horrible, dark, nasty aspects of human nature and just being a person. So yeah, this kind of stuff, as horrible as it was, and as just like Tyler said, I feel like I need a shower without seeing any of myself. Yeah, this is real good.
Yeah,
this is real good.
Cool. I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of talk more about it. Let's start out in Deer Meadow. everyone's favorite other town in Washington. Let's take. I want to take temperature of the room. How do we feel about Chester Desmond, Agent Chet?
I don't remember any of their names. Which one was who?
The Cooper stand-in at the beginning of this.
I mean, I didn't like him. I didn't hate him, but it just felt like with how charismatic every other FBI member is, we could have got someone better for this role, and even probably wrote him a little more uniquely.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about the opening 30 minutes of this movie we are dropped into basically a bizarro world version of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Chet Desmond, whose initials are CD, Dale Cooper's are DC. I don't know if there's anything there. Probably not. I'm gonna be.
Couldn't be.
I'm gonna be connecting a lot of dots for no reason, probably. But like, I feel like is the same type of person as Cooper. Like he is someone that goes in and gets stuff done, but he has his own MO. Or modus operandi, as Gordon Cole yells at us at the beginning of this movie. But it really is. It's crazy to me watching this because it's literally every single thing they go and do is like the polar opposite of the pilot of Twin Peaks. Yeah. They go and meet the sheriff, who's an asshole. They meet the deputy, who is the exact opposite of Andy. There's a receptionist who is a dick and is like not Lucy at all. They go to Hap's Diner and meet the least Norma waitress that has ever existed. Also, as they are going into Hap's, there's just strobing, flashing light, which is not addressed immediately, but then at the end of the scene, it just turns out some guy is working on a lamp. But it's like the same as that scene in the morgue with Cooper. Even Teresa Banks, when they describe her, the sheriff says she was a drifter. No one cares. No one came to claim the body. And her body is horrifying looking. Her eyes are still open. Her mouth is agape. As opposed to when we see Laura Palmer, who has this very serene look on her face, on, the dead body or whatever. And it's crazy. It's such a weird thing. Is something getting picked up?
Just when the table shakes.
I think it was a drink. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, everything's total opposite. There's a moment in the bar. I don't know if this. I mean, I assume it was intentional, but maybe I'm reading too much into it. We get a shot of the two FBI agents, and behind them, the sign is kind of shining through the window. The neon sign is, and we see the R, which looks very much similar font to the Double R Diner, but it's just a single R. And they're blocking the rest of the words.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even notice that. Okay.
So now that I noticed that then, but I didn't really make the significant connection of why it was there until you just explained all those opposites that I didn't catch.
Interesting.
And,
okay.
Yeah. I feel like that was kind of in line with those.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Kiefer Sutherland is also in this movie, which is
homie.
It's weird seeing Kiefer Sutherland. I guess I haven't seen a lot of Kiefer Sutherland like when he was younger.
He was in that movie Lost Boys, right? And that's
I believe so. Yeah,
and that would have been when he's younger.
Yeah, and that would have been a while before this even too. But
I liked him a lot. He fits what I want from the FBI in this show.
And
he's the opposite of Albert in a lot of ways. He's like sweet. Yeah. He's like just trying and simple, and
he is very like socially inept. In the same way Albert is also socially inept, but just in the opposite direction.
Well, it's like I feel like when they write all the FBI agents, they're like, okay, now what's his quirk? And his is just that weird, like, I repeat everything until someone responds to me, I will repeat what I have to say, like all those different things. Whereas I feel like the main FBI
Chet
agent,
Desmond,
Chet doesn't have that. I feel like.
I think Val Kilmer should have played Chet Desmond.
I could have seen that. I would have liked that actually. I'm not a huge fan of Chris Isaac, who is a musician, like a country musician. don't know that he's done a lot of acting outside of this before or since. It's not great. But I think that there's enough there that's kind of interesting. But yeah, so it's so hard to know where to like start and go with this movie.
It's interesting that they spend so much time to that end. The only tangential connection we get later is like, so that girl, because she was a drifter of some sort, she might have worked at One Eye Jacks, but somehow she knew Laura and Ronette.
Right.
So they were kind of, prostituting together. And
we kind of see like Leland apparently saw a picture of her in what appears to be Flesh World. Like there's that picture of her or whatever. So yeah.
It's just, I mean, and this is something, I don't know if we heard Teresa Banks' name specifically, but we did hear about these other murders early in Twin Peaks history.
No, I remember her name popping up in the
she's
pilot even.
mentioned the pilot, yeah.
I don't know, I really like this stuff of Twin Peaks, and I like when David Lynch is in charge of this stuff. His episodes and this movie, when we do get the quirky stuff and the really weird, goofy stuff, works a lot better when he's in charge, I think. I really enjoyed that whole beginning thing with the woman in the dress, and at first you're like, fuck? And then as that's explained in the car, it's like, I don't know, that comes together really well. It's dumb, it's fun, but it's also really smart.
Yeah.
I assume the blue rose means it's stuff connected to like Black Lodgy type of stuff, like supernatural kind of things.
Yeah.
And that's why you can't talk about it.
Right.
But yeah, all that stuff I find really fun and enjoyable. I wish there was more of it in this movie, but at the same time, you can't accomplish what this movie does by doing that, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I think so. This movie, when it came out, obviously no one wanted this movie. I mean, I feel like if this movie is pitched to me after I've just watched the finale of season 2 of Twin Peaks, I also don't want it. And in general, if someone's like, remember that movie about that horrific murder? What if we made like a prequel that just showed that horrific murder? Like, I'm not in. Like,
this show that petered out in the ratings, that wasn't big anymore,
exactly.
And we're not going to give you any answers. Doesn't give. It was billed as like, and maybe it was sort of deceptively marketed as the next piece of Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
like. Other than an answer, I don't see what would have really drawn. So I was like, how did this get funded and made?
Yeah, it's bizarre. But it is something we kind of discussed this a little bit. Like, Mark Frost isn't really involved in this. I think him and David Lynch had something of a falling out between the finale and this. I don't think that Mark Frost was really interested in telling this story, which I understand. Incest is not on that high on my list of,
Don't tell that to George R. R. Martin, okay?
But that's fun. But that's it's really interesting. I think this movie does do a good job of tying Cooper into that in the little time that he is on screen, and also introducing just basically fuck any idea you had of a linear timeline with this, because Annie Blackburn's bloodied face is going to show up in Laura Palmer's bed days before she dies. That was my favorite part.
Where she was more concerned with her body disappearing than she was with the bloody corpse being in her
I actually want to talk about it. I think that's part of what makes me so uncomfortable about this movie is there are moments where the characters on screen are horrified at the wrong things, I feel like. And even, like, there's two moments in particular. That one, she looks over, sees Annie in her bed, and is fine. Here's her whole speech. Looks over at the door again, looks back, she's gone. And that's when we get the scream. And the one before that is not as much a character's fault, but a filmmaking thing, is when, after she gets the painting and the boy tells her the man behind the mask is looking for the diary or whatever, and he's under the fan now. She goes home and is slowly opening her door. She screams before we have a chance to see anything that's happening, even though that's what that scene is building to. And so it's almost like these.
Don't we see like his shoulder? Like it's like
you see like a Jean, like barely an outline of Jean, and it's just this immediate scream and cut back to her. And there's just moments like that throughout this that I feel like are built in there to put you off guard and to like subvert what you think is going to happen. Because this movie uses a lot of horror tropes, but not to the correct end, I guess, if that makes sense.
There were a couple moments early on and that was kind of one of them when she's creeping up there, like clearly building something where I was genuinely a little scared. And then everything from then on, maybe is because my expectations were already prepared for that subversion. I was like not as concerned about having a jump scare.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of similar for me, at least with the show, of these horrific moments of in the moment they are so bizarre and handled so strangely that I don't necessarily feel exactly what he wants me to feel, but it's afterwards when I'm thinking about it. Like right now, even thinking of like him behind that dresser and like putting myself in her shoes a little more, and just how horrifying and terrifying that all is. And it's more effective to me as I look back on it ever than it is in the moment with Twin Peaks for me.
Yeah.
There's just so many strange choices he makes. They don't follow, like you said, they don't follow a typical structure. It's kind of like the structure of a joke, right? Is the kind of the structure of a scare in a movie.
Yeah.
There's this kind of a similar setup there, and he just doesn't follow that.
Yeah.
And he does it in his own unique Lynchy way, mostly involving shots that are too long, even though he claims there's not such a thing. But
there were a couple of really fun shots in this.
I want to talk a little bit about that. Of how do you feel as someone who loves the show so much on the production value of this movie and how it contrasts with the show, at least the first 2 seasons?
I mean, this is obviously like a grungier. All of it looks grungier. Even Twin Peaks feels different in this. It does to me feel closer to the pilot. If you go back and watch parts of the pilot, this does feel closer to that, even though that still feels way different.
Less noir feel.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me also, this movie, I don't know. It's hard for me to think. The thing that is hard about this movie, I feel like, also is, and I think you can say this of other David Lynch movies, is there's not a whole lot to actually compare them to, unless you get to like really obscure European art house stuff, like Dario Argento, like Suspiria, and that kind of stuff has this kind of feel, where it feels like the subconscious goal is more important than what you're consciously seeing.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
And David Lynch, I think in particular, and I've probably said this 97 times on this podcast. I know I've said it at least 100 times to all of you, but like, I really do think that David Lynch sees film as in the same toolbox as painting and sculpture. Like, to him, film is just this other medium, and he wants to fuck with it in weird ways. And I think he does. Like, even like you were saying, there's there are shots in this that are extremely long for seemingly no reason. But then there are other things that are so deliberate. I think about the conversation early in this movie between Donna and Laura. I love the way that's shot when Donna's laying on the couch and Laura's laying on that chair or whatever. And that conversation just becomes these really tight close-ups of each of their faces. And it starts out as this master shot of both of them, but as that conversation goes on, they become more separate, and that is told in the cinematography, right? You know what I mean? And like, there's moments like that, and then there's moments where he even subverts that idea, where I don't know, I think about like the stuff primarily at the beginning. That shot of Gordon Cole at the beginning of this movie, I hate. I think it is so ugly.
Or he just
so
stands still.
Yeah, it's like that profile shot, and he's standing in front of this giant picture of some nature landscape that is apparently behind his desk. Like, it looks
like people
really
following
weird.
their marks too. Like, that secretary and both David Lynch feel like they're like, okay, Mark 1, Mark 2. Like, it feels like they're thinking through it in their heads. Like they did one take and then stopped it.
Yeah, it's weird.
But I think I really, really liked the a lot of the choices production wise in this. I think with the tone of what the majority of this movie is, at least the color palette change is appropriate. The lighting is better lighting. It's not. The show is a lot more drastic and fake lighting.
It's more controlled. I feel like,
and some of that might be budget constraints or whatever it may be, but it does lend itself better to something like this, as well as the cinematography. There's some really good cinematography in this movie. There's some continuity in editing, but I see David Lynch as a guy who just doesn't give a shit about that. Like, almost prefers it.
Well, and I think particular in this movie, there's some of that that's purposeful. Like, there's a couple shots, a couple continuity things that, and this is probably different than what you're talking about. I want to differentiate that, but I noticed a couple things this time in the scene when we'll call them the Tremons, even though in this movie they are not referred to that at all, except for in the credits, only the Chalfonts, but the old woman and her grandson. So when we see them, basically we see Shelley is helping bring out the Meals on Wheels, and it cuts to that shot across the street, and you can see them walking away from the diner into the trees. And then when Laura comes out, the next shot we see is that shot again, but they are like 10 feet away walking towards the diner. And it's a weird thing that I feel like is one of those like Black Lodge continuity things. I don't know if it's also just a weird like subconscious like thing that you might not consciously register, but your brain might register to people walking away and then they're walking toward. I don't know. It's bizarre.
Well, that seems like something more intentional.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking more about things like there's a shot where when Donna comes in and Laura is getting ready to go to I'm horrible with names, guys. The
bar?
The crazy
the
bar.
Roadhouse.
Yeah. She's like got her hands up at her chest, and then the next shot they're down at her like waist, stuff like that. Lots of that in this movie.
Yeah, there were a few things I noticed.
But yeah, I feel like that's very much David Lynch being like, it's the performance that matters.
Yeah. I
above
think,
all.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if he runs into something where it's like, oh, that performance was the right take, then that's just the one that's going to be there.
He seems like that type of guy.
Yeah.
Continuity is hard.
It is.
I don't usually notice that stuff. I did notice a few times. Yeah, we've shot a few things where it's like, oh, really thought he was in the same spot.
I really thought that whole post that's holding up our light wasn't in the center of the fucking shot. It's right on the third, and the little grid marks were blocking it on the camera.
Unbelievable.
Anyways.
So, man, so something that shocked me about this movie that kind of was different than I expected. There were a lot of characters that don't make a return that I was expecting we would see, and honestly, in some cases, in my opinion, is a detriment to the film. I would have really liked to see some things with Dr. Jacoby and Laura explored a little bit more. Who else? Was
I was just glad we got Harold. Well, I think the sheriff fits. Like, it would have made sense for him to be in this in some way, shape, or form, or Ed, like even in passing, and maybe those characters didn't want that because they weren't critical to it. I think Cooper's the only one that Lynch would have been like, well, we want to have him present somehow, some way, no matter what, because he does in a way bridge a couple of these things. But it's we didn't see some pretty like big time characters, no cops.
Yeah. Also, the level of James' involvement is a little weird to me that he's not involved a little bit more for how devastated he is all the time. Yeah. Also, the friendship between the three of them, I feel like, is non-existent in this. It feels like James almost feels like a stranger to Donna, just like someone that she like thinks is beautiful and eyes from far away. Yeah. As opposed to like these people, and like they didn't have the scene where they. It was the marker I was looking for to know when her murder was coming, was them filming that video. Like, wasn't that supposed to be like the day before or something?
I don't remember, honestly, if that's
the one where you can see the motorcycle reflected.
Yeah.
I was expecting just some stuff like that I think there's a few character interactions that even if it was just one scene, I think could have added a little bit more of a rewarding feel to someone who has seen the first 2 seasons.
Well, I mean, we get zero Great Northern, which is really interesting.
Oh yeah, Ben Horn.
We
Was
know
someone
Laura
I
had
thought
a
was gonna be in
relationship
it.
with Ben Horn. She kind of says she got kicked out of One-Eyed Jacks, which I don't know if we fully knew that she was kicked out of that position, because clearly she's, Jacques still has a relationship with that business. She still has a relationship with the drugs. Maybe it was because she was just doing too much cocaine. But she's finding another way to please those customers. She doesn't need One-Eyed Jacks.
Yeah, does a lot of cocaine. We see a lot of cocaine
Yeah.
used.
It's so funny that I am preconditioned to think like, oh, cocaine, no big deal. But then when I heard him say the F word or we saw boobs, I was like, oh, I forgot this is rated R. You
That's
can
true.
do whatever
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a jarring thing. It is a totally different beast. It's a weird,
Yeah, the amount of teenagers you see their breasts and doing cocaine in this film is disturbing.
yeah,
'Cause they're all supposed to be like underage too, right?
yeah. I mean,
Like
they're.
17.
I would imagine. Yeah, I don't know exactly how old, but I think pretty much everyone's 17.
Kind of made me want to do some cocaine.
This made you want to do
I know, of all the you thought like Wolf of Wall Street, maybe? Nah.
I was gonna say, like, that
I have a
seems
very
the more
sensitive nose.
appealing side of cocaine than.
She's like, man, her day got a lot better. All right.
This is a hard movie. It really is a hard movie to talk about. I feel like we're all over the place.
It is. It's very sporadic itself.
But let's go back and talk some specifics real quick. So let's just talk about the FBI stuff. And let's talk about Philip Jeffries. Let's talk about David Bowie.
Oh yes, gosh.
I just want to get your guys' impressions about. Basically, we have 2 FBI agents disappear. One who had previously disappeared and just reappeared for a couple minutes and then disappears again. What's your guys' take on all that? And was that interesting? Do you have any? Does it feel compelling at all? Or I don't know.
It was interesting, but it didn't feel like fan service. It felt like Lynch service. Like he was just dropping this in there to maybe address later, maybe not, but seemed pretty impertinent to everything. Like, okay, we know weird shit's going on because he is on camera and appears but doesn't appear. But that doesn't necessarily jibe exactly with anything that we've seen from Aliens or from the Lodges. Like, it's not like, oh, we saw David Bowie do something really similar to one of the other supernatural elements. Mm-hmm. Not that it's completely unrelated, but yeah, it just seemed like it was fodder for something at another time. Like, it seemed useless, but I was like, hey, Bowie.
yeah.
What up?
Something I've thought of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Since really the beginning of started watching the show, maybe I kind of feel like maybe it's just sort of like the climate that we live in now. Mm-hmm. That like the choice of using the FBI as like the organization that is handling all of this weird shit that's going on, like that doesn't feel as compelling to me anymore, mainly because I'm just like, I personally am just like so jaded with like government organizations in general. Like it just doesn't feel like they're supposed like it in this show. It kind of feels like they've been set up as like this powerful organization. Like Cooper's obviously the good guy and he has all this authority. I don't know. Does that kind of make sense? Like it doesn't feel as like, I don't know. Like, well, there's not a connection there for me because I don't look up to this organization. Like,
I think in 1991 and
right.
though,
Yeah.
it's a whole different story.
Timing wise, like, I think that then it probably works just fine, but that's something that me as somebody watching this today, like I don't feel that way because I don't have that sort of like connection with the organization. I don't know. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know.
No, it does. And I think there's something even deeper there is that David Lynch is so infatuated with the 50s and you think about the FBI in the 50s,
right?
You know what I mean? Like that. And I think that goes along with a lot of the other aspects of this show. Like Lynch does tend to romanticize these things that were romanticized when he was growing up, or that he holds these romantic feelings for. But he also, in a lot of those cases, tends to show the darker side of that.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I don't know that we've seen that. I don't think that he's done that with the FBI as an institution, anything like that.
Yeah,
so
you
totally
think of like shows like Stranger Things or something that are really popular right now. Like that type of an agency or organization is like cast as like the bad guys now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like in this case, that's the total. It's like complete opposite.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's a great observation for sure.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mitchell on. I feel like it doesn't fit this movie. It doesn't do anything for this movie by itself. If we were to ever have seen those other two that were planned, maybe this would feel more complete or important. It's what I'm most interested in. It's the stuff I love about Twin Peaks the most. And when he came in and that started happening, I was like, oh, this is like, I got excited. I was really intrigued. And then it just kind of goes nowhere. I don't know if we're supposed to hear what he's saying or if my TV audio just sucks.
The audio was a little weird tonight. There's a couple audio things I want to talk about. Because, I mean, I don't think that scene in particular you're supposed to understand everything, but it's a little easier to understand than it was tonight. And like I said, we're going to watch the missing pieces between now and actually starting the next season of Twin Peaks: The Return. And in the missing pieces, that scene is actually broken out from the Black Lodge stuff. And so you can kind of hear everything he's saying, but it's still very cryptic. But it's stuff like, I mean, I think some of the most intriguing things that Philip Jeffries says is right when he comes in and he points directly at Cooper and says, "Who do you think this is there?" Like, does that mean that he knows that the good Cooper's in the lodge? You know what I mean? Is that another time thing where like he thinks that the good Cooper is stuck in the lodge and this is the Cooper that is in cahoots with Bob at this point? And then he mentions Judy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then he basically talks about how he had followed these people. He went to one of their meetings. We see all the Black Lodge entities that we've seen up to this point, not in the waiting room or the Black Lodge or whatever that space is, but in this dingy room.
Looks like him out of the Matrix.
Yeah. And I do want to remind you guys, I don't know if you guys remember this from, I believe it's in episode 2, season 1, episode 3, when we see Mike in Cooper's dream, he talks about we lived above a convenience store. And I think this is...
I actually thought about that too during this
room.
movie, and I was like hoping we were going to see that, and then
we
might have.
There's a couple things that Mike says in the series that I feel like are... The breadcrumb trail is kind of continued by this movie, because he also talks about when he's in the bed at the Great Northern and they take his medicine away from him again, which is still a fucked up thing to do. Don't do that. He says something about he wants this pain, and I can't remember what else it says, but he mentions a golden circle. Which in this movie, a ring of some note and power is introduced. Whether we understand the mechanics of that or what it means, I don't know. But I think there is something there. Anyways, tangents galore. This is, like I said, this is tough to talk about.
Do we just want to take it by character then?
Yeah, let's do that. Sorry.
And while we're here, let's talk about him. Let's talk about Philip Gerard, because I've got some feelings on this guy in this movie, and it's confusing me, frustrating me. Hopefully, you can help me make sense of it.
Okay.
He's the fucking worst at his job. If his job is to hunt Bob, then,
that's the question. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, because like that's what it. Is that still the case, or is it like we've been misled up to this point? Because I couldn't tell what the message was trying to say about this guy.
Because he's definitely, I would say, if we thought of Mike as a good guy in Twin Peaks, this movie definitely disabuses us of the notion that he is of a noble. I don't know, that he's. I guess for me, going back to what he says, me and Bob, basically we used to run around together, whatever his speech is. And then I saw the face of God.
So at this point could have been before that.
It could be. I don't think it is. My read on that is probably weird, and I don't know how much sense it'll make outside of a bunch of other ideas kicking around in my brain. But I don't know what God means to Philip Gerard. I don't want to know what that means to Mike. I don't know if that means that him and Bob were going against some cosmic force, and now he is the police for that cosmic force that doesn't give a shit about humanity, but only some cosmic system we don't understand. So I think that he is hunting Bob. I don't think that it's because he's a good guy by our standards. You know what I mean? Like, to me, there is something larger than him that he has fallen back in line with that Bob still is going against.
Yeah.
That's my read on it.
That's interesting. So, yeah, because if he is trying to stop him, he sucks his job because he has him cornered at once again using old people going slow as a way to screw people's lives up. He's got him stopped and cornered, and all he's got to do is get out of his freaking car. Instead, he just yells at him, and then Leland Bob just drives like 10 feet and parks where he could have caught up with him there. And then later at the train car, he just kind of opens the door, Ronette falls out, and the door closes again, and he just kind of does nothing at all.
So he did, in that moment, that he throws the ring into the train car.
Okay, apparently I missed that.
Which is, because that's where the ring came from, is he had it, and then we see it, after the door is open, kind of fly in and onto the thing, and Laura picks it up and puts it on.
But what does it do?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that answered in the return? Because here's my take.
There's more of it.
There's just more of it.
I mean, I'm not gonna say I can't. I have an idea of how and what that is and what is happening when she puts that ring on. I don't know that it's useful for me to talk about that now.
Gotcha.
Let me tell
you know what I mean?
I think, because I don't know what the hell happened.
Please, yes.
I mean, it almost seems like this movie ends with Laura in a good place. Like, not like, the lodge, but like she's done up pretty. There's some sort of angel there, and she seems to be laughing. Like, I almost wonder if like her mortal life ended badly, but after kind of getting shit upon by this extraterrestrial or fantastical elements that are creeping in on Twin Peaks, she ends up in a good place, in a place of peace. Afterwards, like maybe that ring allows her to join the club. Like she can now be like so many of these other people that we've only seen in the lodge or in visions, where they are I don't know about immune to Bob, but I mean clearly when Cooper is in the Black Lodge, like Laura's presence is often there, and she seems to be as in control as anyone else there. So I wonder if the ring was something to salvage something for her in a supernatural sense, even though her mortal life ended so painfully.
Interesting.
I think going off of that kind of a little bit, my whole take on it is going off the fact that Lynch is, a painter and looks at things kind of looking at it from that perspective. And I see that the most in the Black Lodge stuff. I mean, it's definitely present throughout other parts of it too, but that's where I see it the most and where the most symbolism is. That ring has that symbol on it from the cave,
Right?
Which I don't know if they've ever mentioned or if you've just said this, and this is how I know it, is that it's a representation of the duality of man.
Okay.
Is that
yeah? So I've just said that, and it's about a slightly further variation on that
because it's only part of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because in my mind, that it's at least associated with that.
Yeah.
Which I think that ring being put on is symbolic of kind of the coming full circle,
Okay.
like a ring type of thing, like kind of an endless loop of that, and kind of accepting and embracing that, which I feel like Laura kind of does with her putting herself in these situations to just kind of, that's her way of escaping this torment, is kind of accepting that, stopping to fight it, and just kind of embracing it and then letting that take her. I don't know. That's kind of my take on it. Is her whoever putting that on as a symbolism of accepting your fate of, your life just can't be good. It's got to be the combination of good and evil.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's accurate at all.
I like that read. Yeah. The iconography of Twin Peaks gets a little muddy and a little complex at this point. But yeah, I actually like that, and I think that that's maybe one of the coolest things this movie does for Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks is, I think what you were saying is, gives her control at the end. She takes agency. She prevents Bob from having her in the way that he wants to. Again, mechanically, I'm not entirely sure how. But it is. I think it's part of that story. This is the part of the story that doesn't get told because there are people like us who are like, I don't want to, I just saw the mystery. But I feel like this movie, more than anything, fleshes out Laura Palmer as a character and is a complex, incredibly flawed, incredibly broken character. And then over the course of an hour and a half attempts to give her a happy ending, which is weird and messy and fucked up. I don't know. It's a bizarre movie.
She was the best part of the movie for me, not just the performance, but just like the amount of time she felt like she was in control and the time she was out of control. Because I mean, it's like when I was in high school, there were always the people who were with people 4 to 5 years older, and they were trying drugs sooner. They might have been selling drugs sooner if they were like part of actual gang families. And so it was always really intimidating to see these people who like, they kind of like thought they were the shit because they were already involved in this next level. And like, they were having sex first, they were trying drugs first. And so like, I felt like I related to Laura in that way. And so she almost feels like she has this control, but also once she's in that arena, she's at the bottom of the bottom of the barrel. And not only that, now she's dealing with like these clear supernatural elements. And early in there, she references that she's like known Bob since she was 12, and she knows that there's this other presence that is after her, but she doesn't know that he's like been possessing her dad. Like it's interesting to think what relationship they had previous to that and how much understanding she has of the supernatural element. So seeing her kind of already trying to like shoot above her level, and then everything else involved, and seeing her insecurities, but then the way she talks to her peers and the way she approaches these situations with such confidence, it is a fascinating dichotomy that I think is, for a character that we only knew from everything around her, it was a really good way to say, okay, you're actually going to spend all this time with this character and it's going to live up to that. That's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, for sure. I think... that I'm endlessly fascinated by the character of Laura Palmer, which maybe makes me as bad as everyone around her. I don't know. That's the other weird thing about this movie is like.
No, I don't feel so good.
Yeah, well, and it's
because I feel the same way. Like her story is, it really.
But aren't we all a little James like, where like we don't want her to feel like she's too good. We want to, well, like Donna and James, it's like there's this person you care about, and to some degree they like you, they want to be around you, but they have this whole other life that they don't want to share, and that is like terrible but irresistible. And so we are almost like that. And again, like I feel like I knew people who were ahead of me in life. I wanted to be maybe not even part of the club. I just wanted to know everything.
Yeah.
And for Laura, and her friends, that was impossible.
Yeah.
So we are all James.
Yeah. Well, and I think of the line. Hey, man, yeah, okay.
I like to think of myself more as a Dick Tremaine.
I've always thought of you as more of a dick too.
Thank you.
No, I think too. I think about the line from Laura's funeral a lot too, of Bobby's speech when he's like, "You want to know who killed Laura? We all did." Like, you see, especially in this movie, how many people saw. Obviously, not the whole picture, but that there were serious things wrong, and she didn't get the angel in her life. You know what I mean? Like that, the angel literally disappears from that painting at some point. Like it's, man.
She also didn't allow it though. Like it is a dichotomy of like her wanting to be released from that. And again, we talked about some relationships that were problematic or that knew about some issues with Laura that we didn't even see. Like, obviously, Ben Horn should not have let her work at One Eye Jacks. Like, put her in this place of like sex and drugs and everything. And so, yeah, it is
step one
crazy.
to saving girls who are in trouble. Don't run a brothel, you idiot.
Ben Horn's like the little finger of Twin Peaks.
He just wants to do good.
But that urge to do bad is so strong.
The other thing, let's talk about Leland really quick.
Can we talk about him really quick?
Let's talk about him next.
Back to brown hair.
Yeah, we get young Leland again. So sexy. So I feel like the thing that you walk away from the show with is this idea that there's this very clear delineation between Leland and Bob. This movie is I feel like a big middle finger to that idea. This implicates Leland very much more.
Yeah, that was kind of shocking to me. That first scene in their house was the relationship that I thought that the Palmers had in their home.
Yeah,
like separate from Bob versus what it actually was in that first scene. I was like, wow.
You see the first scene, is that the one where he's yelling at her and
For the
her
dirty hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
and he also, I just want to point out, he looks under the finger, the left ring finger,
Right.
which is where the letters get.
I thought she was so
which is-
scared. She made it seem like this was out of the ordinary for him. And you did say in Missing Pieces, which we'll watch this week, there are some Happy Palmer family moments.
Yeah.
So I definitely thought it was muddled. I did not think it was black and white when he was Leland and when he was Bob. But I did think for Laura, that still might be slightly more clear. But yeah, it was disturbing how unclear it was at times here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that was
and-
something shocking too. Of that, I didn't know beforehand that Laura didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
that up until so late, at least, that she didn't know that they were one and the same. Or
And she has some sort of sight where she can see Bob more often. That's why, like, when Bob was in her bed and even at the beginning of the train in the cabin scene, she doesn't always see her dad right away.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else, it seems like Bob, it chooses that reveal. Maybe he does here too. Well, also, shouts to the actor who plays Bob, because it's really one note and only has to wear one costume the whole time.
Yeah. And I love him. And he's
pretty good.
Such a powerful, like, image. I don't know.
Presence is felt every time he's on the screen.
Yeah.
If there's ever a musical adaptation of Twin Peaks, I'd really like to play Bob.
You'd make a great Bob, Mitchell.
I just put that wig on me and let me make those faces. Oh, yeah. Give me a grunge number right before the freaking intermission.
I'm pretty sure it'd be very similar to that scene in the musical in Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Boy soul.
Yeah,
Gay man.
Can you sing backwards?
Oh gosh.
I can learn.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. But I think that's an important thing this movie does as well. Is it makes Leland? It doesn't let him off scot-free. Like, I feel like
it's very
it happens
interesting.
in the show.
Yeah.
You're still kind of left with, like, how much does Leland know about what's going on? Because there's those scenes with, like, the clock changing, and you can, like, his facial expression goes from, like, that very, like, furrowed brow, and he, like, relaxes and kind of gets this sense of, like he's back to being his normal Leland self. And he goes in and, like, tells Laura, like, I love you.
Yeah.
I think that was after he got mad at her with the dirty hands or something. So, like, to me, I thought that was, like, sort of like Bob's presence kind of leaving him for a bit and him kind of being in control again. Yeah. So, like, I wonder, like, if the implication is that Leland has been raping his daughter since she was 12 years old, like, how, and don't we also have something about, like, when Leland was a kid, like, Bob was, I can't remember the details with this,
He was
but,
like
like,
at the cabin near where his family hung out.
so, like, there's, like, this pattern of, like, abuse that is present here, and Bob is kind of, like, just goes through the whole line of everything. And so who knows, like, how much Leland...
Well, just with how it ends, too, in the show where Leland dies, that whole scene makes me feel like he's still kind of not, though. Like, or at least there's a chance for him that however Bob's presence works within him, that he's not fully aware of a lot of this stuff.
Right.
I mean, I do think, I feel like the moments with Teresa Banks, the first time we see him with Teresa Banks is very un-Bob.
That's true.
He has this line that says, "You look just like my Laura," which is
Yeah.
like, that to me signals, if not intent, desire. You know what I mean? Like, and
Well, I think it just
don't
kind
know.
of depends how much how Bob's presence works, which I don't think will ever be answered nor like talked about. But it's like, does he when Bob is in control, so to say, is he always in full control, or is he like, is he more of an influence? Is he more of a?
And even if he leaves, has he warped Leland enough? And I wonder too, like, has Bob come out with Sarah? Because Sarah Palmer, who we still don't get quite enough time with, in my opinion, she seems to be constantly a little uncomfortable and disturbed. And you wonder if it's been being married to someone who has this this satanic and otherworldly presence, you know, constantly, maybe even abusing her, and her just feeling this natural, unsafe, pain-filled feeling all the time.
Well, that's kind of the vibe I got when he forces her to drink that drugged milk or whatever it is. It's like you can tell she knows what it is.
Yeah.
But I got the impression she doesn't know necessarily what happens when she's drugged, but she knows that it is a drug, and she knows that bad things do happen. And the fact that she still drinks it anyway, there's a whole lot of subtext to that of how he got her to that point, and it's very disturbing.
Well, yeah, and in the hand washing scene, like, her reaction, if you do divorce that, if you take the idea that she doesn't have the knowledge that her husband is raping her daughter, which I don't think she does know, the way she reacts does very much hint that she is afraid that he will abuse her daughter, possibly in a way that he has abused her. Which, it is this. I think that's the center of what is at this movie. Honestly, is like you're saying, Justin, this cycle of abuse and the absolute blurred lines, and the idea that it is impossible to understand why someone would do that. You know what I mean? Like, this, having this entity possess them makes that somehow understandable, but this movie does a good job of removing that crutch to where it's like, I don't know where the line between Leland and Bob is, but also it does. I don't know that it matters. You know, at least in the framing of this story. Like, we can talk mechanically lore, of course. Like, that's interesting, but like, I think specifically in the Tale of the Palmers, like, it does a great job of removing that and making you a lot less okay with everything about it. So
it also gives a lot more weight to those shots, which is a weird way to do this, of that fan in the show.
That's a good point.
How it seems to be a ritualistic thing of him turning that on, whether it's to make it be a noise distraction or whatever it may be, or if it's just his ritual. That's
so I actually want to tie it in. There's a thing that's introduced in this, and again, I cannot stress enough, it's really important you go and watch The Missing Pieces. In the Philip Jeffries we'll just call it the convenience store for now. The convenience store scene, there's a lot of just lines thrown out. It's the first time we hear the word Garmonbosia, which later is subtitled with the parenthetical after it that just says pain and sorrow. And is then equated to creamed corn. Multiple references to corn. Anyways, one of the things that happens in that convenience store scene is we get another throat shot of someone, and as we're coming out of their mouth, they say the words electricity. Throughout this movie, electricity seems to herald some kind of Black Lodge interference. When we see the Tremons, there's static that comes over the screen. And I don't know if the fan is tied into that, the idea that when the fan is on, that is this electrical force in that, you know what I mean? There's so many weird things, and the idea of using electricity as a thing like that signals the presence of evil basically means that evil is in every scene of your movie, which I feel like it kind of is. But so that's something that's really interesting and weird to me.
It's kind of shared with the TV thing, the static of the TV. At the beginning is layered over everything in this movie. When stuff like that happens, and that mainly being the moment where not Ronette, Teresa is murdered. I think I mean, I think that is a theme you connect to all those other moments that static is present.
Yeah.
That filter is present. And so, yeah, I think there is something to that of weirdly that is some form like electricity being, or at least, electricity is the only connection.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
Well, and so the other thing, in talking about sound, so this movie does some really interesting sound things. David Lynch is the sound designer on this movie. He is also the sound designer for all 18 episodes of The Return, which we're about to watch.
That's so interesting.
And there's some interesting things in this that this is a hard movie to get that. Like, David Lynch definitely designs his movies to be like, this is supposed to be in an expensive movie theater, but you're probably not watching, especially if you're watching this on your laptop on like Criterion Channel, you're not getting that. But there are a couple moments that I want to point out just in case that is the case. So a really interesting sound cue we get is when Dale Cooper meets the man from another place, and he says, "Do you know who I am? I'm the arm, and I sound like this." And he does this like Native American like whooping thing. That sound happens twice in the movie before that, very
whooping?
subtly in the mix. The first time is when they first go to the Fat Trout trailer park, and there's a shot of an electrical pole, and you hear that and then comes and like fizzles out. The second time is when Chet Desmond goes back to the Fat Trout trailer park alone, and there's that shot that this electrical pole is right in the center of as they're walking towards the camera, and Chet Desmond's talking to Carl Rod, and that woman comes out and is like, "Where's my goddamn hot water, Carl?" That power pole is right in the middle. After Carl Rod goes, you get another shot of that pole, and that sound happens again. The third time we hear that sound is when the one-armed man is road raging behind Leland and Laura. As the car is coming up, you hear that sound again. Again, I don't know if that's a thing that just is much to herald the presence of a specific, that is tied to a specific person from the Black Lodge. So I don't know if that means the arm is involved in Chet Desmond's disappearance, but it's something to note. The second sound thing I want to note is at the very end of the movie, it takes a long time for this movie to end. You see a shot of the monkey that we've seen only one other time in the convenience store. The monkey's mouth moves, and you hear the whisper of the name Judy, which is mentioned by Philip Jeffries earlier, only in the context that he's not going to talk about Judy. He's not going to say anything about Judy. And then the monkey says the name Judy. Those are just things you might want to carry with you forward. I don't know what else to say about him. But there are also things, and we'll see very early in the next season, David Lynch pretty overtly points to the idea that you need to pay attention to not only what you're seeing, but what you're hearing. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have 18 hours to listen. But yeah, those are just some notable things I want to make sure we talk about. I don't have a whole lot to add to that right now. What else do you guys want to talk about? Is there anything else that you guys are dying to talk about? I mean, the Garmin Bosey, I think, is a really interesting, weird,
I want to talk
made-up word.
I want to talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, let's do it, yeah.
I mean, the man from another place, first of all, I always got the impression that he was very neutral. Yeah. Especially, and I liked that idea of him being neither good nor evil in a story about, human duality.
Yeah.
But now I like see a lot more. He's a little more on the evil side, right. After this movie, which is very different than how I thought of him beforehand. He's either some sort of parasite as well, or everyone from that group in that convenience store seems to need some sort that sustenance of pain and sorrow.
Right.
I assume they're all associated with the Black Lodge, and none of them are associated with the White Lodge, really, because the emotions for the White Lodge are, love and, the right. Positive emotions that I assume whatever entities reside there feed off of that in some way or form.
Yeah. And we're introduced to a couple new entities. Someone who's referred to as the Jumping Man, which is the white masked He's in the red suit in the convenience store, but then we see the grandson wearing that. That's where we see that mask more often.
Yeah.
So are they tied? You know what I mean? I imagine they're tied somehow. And then we also see a guy with a very fake-looking beard and shitty clothes slapping his knee backwards.
I thought that was Catherine. I'm sorry. Oh man! But
he is like a woodsman type thing. There are theories that is Catherine's husband that died in a fire.
God.
I think that's bullshit. But we'll.
I think
there'll be similar things.
I don't imagine that any of them are real people or ever human beings on the planet Earth in this reality. I really want to know how old the lodge is. I'm really fascinated to know if that's something that's been around, like it's an eternal thing that's always been around, or if it was something that was created. I love that shit so much. That's probably my favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
I feel like all of them are. I haven't thought about it enough yet to really come to anything like super solid. I think each of them is very representative of symbolically of something. I feel like I was like trying to count them. I'm like, are they like the 7 horses of the men of the apocalypse? Are they like, because we see like the white horse on occasion, and that seems to have some sort of connection with Bob and them. Well,
let's see, because they seem to be different than Bob.
Bob seems like he was off the rails a bit.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, is he a similar being to them? Can they come into the world? And the thing is, like, we see the old lady and her grandson in such a normal moment where you don't realize that they're not real for a while. Like, there's nothing to point to them being... well, I guess in that scene there are a few things, but we meet them in pretty normal. Donna just going by and thinking that she's...
Well, there's the creamed corn thing.
Yeah,
the creamed corn is like that early in the show. Yeah.
I mean, I assume they are. I assume that boy... because to me, he's very symbolic of the nature of duality as well, but also the parasitical, their nature, because he's wearing this mask, but then he like flips it over, you know. Yeah. His mask also has no eye holes, which I feel like is very intentional.
Yeah.
It's something to do with sight and either purposely being blind to something or turning a blind eye to something. Or also there's a nail in his forehead. Is that what that is? Or is it just a random...
I don't know, honestly. I can't remember specifically.
Coming out of his forehead. I feel like there's a lot there to unpack and to dig into.
I don't even have my hopes up, honestly, that we're going to get answers to that.
I'm sure we are not.
The origin of either lodge, the position of either lodge, the characterization or position of each of those people, like those all being left up to. I mean, and I want to know because clearly they have some alien relation because of like the messages Agent Major Briggs was getting. And then it's like, hey, is there good? Is there like something that's supposed to be helping these people? Yeah. Are they attacking Twin Peaks, or is it really just Bob being rogue and being a bad person? Like, I have so little hope that I'm going to find out how exactly Bob works, because like he was able to kill Leland when he left him, but he's possessed other people. He was in... oh my God. I just don't expect any answers. At the same time, I'm going to think about them.
Yeah. To me, they kind of seem like they're either on a more primal level, which I think the monkey represents. I think it represents the primal nature of, you know, the human race, and the horrible things we do to each other, being represented just by the most primitive form of a primate. But so I think they're either like, that's what they kind of represent, is like the sub-level, most primal level of different sections of humanity, or they reside on like a higher plane, like they're like almost like on an incomprehensible deity platform. Of those two opposites, is kind of the vibe I got from them, because they just the way they seem to handle themselves and think about things, and even just human lives and stuff, is so different than we would.
I'm just gonna find one Reddit theory that sounds good and answers my questions. Be like, yeah, that's what I believe.
Oh man, if you can find one that you feel that way about, I will be excited to hear it. I've been thinking in that way for a long time, and god damn
just give me one I feel good about. I know you've talked about how David Lynch feels about answers or full characterization, and I think while he probably has some definite maybe paranormal absolutes that he's decided about his world, I also think it's important to him that there aren't absolutes, period, for some of it. You know, that's why like it'd be nice to know maybe some of the logistics behind alien versus life and death versus location versus good and evil and these beings, but it doesn't mean I need to know like what each being truly represents or why. And but it is like I'm going to think about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point of it. I think those things are things that are meant to be. That's visual art in general, right?
Yeah.
It's like those are things that they mean stuff to different people. They invoke an emotion in you. They change. They, depending on how seriously you take it, can change your life in different ways. But the stuff that I feel like we should have answers for are the lore type of things, not necessarily what each one represents, but like what is their function in this world. I think I want those answers. Those are the ones that I'm scared I'm not going to get.
Yeah. I will say we'll kind of wrap this up. We've been going for a while, I think. I think
It's a little aimless. Like we didn't delve into plot, but whatever.
This is
so
going to be
like
one of the harder episodes. I think there will be some stuff coming up that will also be maybe as equally mind bending, but there will be some more solid stuff to talk about. But I do, just before we do, I think there's a lot of those subtle things too that I think this is a thing that benefits from repeat viewings,
Which I don't want to do.
and that's fine. But it is that type of thing.
Yeah.
Like it goes that deep, and I will say Mark Frost. Mark Frost is the lore guy. That is Twin Peaks. Mark Frost is the lore guy. David Lynch is the cool shit you see. And also, I mean, that's not to say that David Lynch doesn't have a grasp of story or lore or anything. He does, but that stuff is way more important to Mark Frost. And he's written over 500 pages of book that came out both prior to and following the return of Twin Peaks. And a lot of that stuff is outlined there. We're going to do a little bonus episode, hopefully this week, just to kind of talk a little bit about that stuff prior to the return, and also talk about the stuff that's in the missing pieces a little bit. There's a lot of iconography in this show. We talked about the ring. It's similar to the Alcave symbol. It's slightly different, I think, in a very important way that ties it to kind of lore-wise some of these other things. We can talk about that probably a little bit later. But yeah, any other thoughts on this movie? Did you guys?
I got so many thoughts.
I know.
It's hard because I'm just thinking about the beats of the last 2 to 3 nights of Laura's life that we don't really need to go through. I mean, like, Donna kind of tries to follow her into it, and then she's clearly just like part of this club with the drugs, and where she's end up having to prostitute herself out and then getting involved with the drug dealers themselves, and just puts her in precarious position after position where it seems like she thinks she should have power but she doesn't. And I just think her character is so interesting, and if that ring does symbolize her becoming something more important than what she was, I think that's a fitting end for someone who caused this entire disruption that would make this town that has always seemed to have some weird crap going on in it, to now have this saga of events and bring someone like Cooper, who seems to be the next human who is almost deemed worthy in a way of constant interaction with the supernatural, to be part of it. So I think going through those, we've gone through Laura enough, but I just think those last 2 nights, which are what this movie is really filling in for us, are super interesting. But yeah.
I will say we didn't talk a lot about what's referred to as the pink room, the very loud room that's subtitled in this movie, which is
how did we not?
I like that.
That scene to me represents so much of Laura's character comes across in that scene. Yeah. Particularly that moment with Donna, which is it's horrifying to watch, and it's horrifying for Laura too. In that moment, you almost see her looking in a mirror again and lamenting over this innocence that's been lost that the log lady mentions in that really bizarre, beautiful moment outside
it's so interesting,
the
because why the log lady, it is funny that she's in there and it's so random and quick, but the way that she feels about Donna, and she's almost daring her step by step, like, drink from this, take this, like, make out with this guy, like, keep thinking she'll chicken out, and when she doesn't hit that point, and she's like, she probably dared herself at all those same points.
Yeah.
I mean, not out of my own personal bias of my dislike of her. But the recasting of Donna, I feel like actually helps in this storyline of her, because I feel like, and not even from like she is a better actress or than Laura Flynn Boyle or anything like that. It's more just like her personality type and how she comes across feels a lot more like I can empathize and care, that she feels a little more innocent.
She looks like she needs protection.
Yeah.
And like,
so when those moments happen, it's a lot more gut wrenching. Like, oh shit, like that's happening to this poor girl, as opposed to if it was Laura Flynn Boyle, I'd be like, this is really what she wants and she's getting what she deserves, type of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I will say there are things in Moira Kelly's performance that are just incredible. Like there's scenes in that pink room, like the when she sees Laura dancing with that guy, that moment, like there are just so many subtle moments with her and small moments with her, with everyone in this movie. Cheryl Lee's she's so good.
that's a challenging,
incredibly underrated,
challenging role.
Yeah.
To do and to pull off, and she does a great job. I think that whole sequence in particular kind of encapsulates a lot of Laura Palmer as a character, like you said, but and also this whole movie in one scene.
Just being in loud places, man, it's hard.
I will say just a bit of trivia about that. The first prints of this movie went out without subtitles on that scene, and it's mixed, so you shouldn't be able to understand that.
Interesting.
So there was a huge contingency of Twin Peaks fans for a while that were like, that scene is meant to be watched without subtitles.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to hear anything that's happening. And David Lynch was like, nah, we fucked up. The subtitles are supposed to be there. So they got those in there. But
Oh, that's great.
But yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this movie is... I have mixed feelings about it. I think structurally, story-wise, having it attached with the show is kind of unneeded, and I guess that's the best word I can say, is just unneeded, and almost kind of a sloppy, irresponsible decision, in my opinion, to tell this story with... Your show is failing. You've got you got the movie to hook people, and this is what you went. But on the other side, on the positive side, a fucking masterclass in the emotion side of it, like to the point where it is worth exploring and seeing, because you get a lot of what the show honestly is about, and delving into a character on an emotional level that is can really blow you away. It's very powerful and self-reflecting and reflecting on what it means to be a person in a dark, horrific way.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
So yeah, I'm kind of I'm very two-sided on this whole thing, which fits the theme of it. So
yeah. Well, and I think I'll be interested to see kind of if what we watch going forward changes your opinion on this movie or on stuff from the first season, because it definitely is like I feel like Lynch's creative process on set, which is kind of this, oh, that's happening, let's do it now. Bob is a character in this show. I think Twin Peaks over the last 25 years has been that. It has been, as opportunities have come up and they've had stories that they feel like are important to tell, they have told them. And it's unlike anything. I can't really think of anything else that's like that.
It's true.
So yeah, but it'll be interesting. So next week we will start. We'll start with The Return. We'll watch the first 2 episodes of The Return, and start to see what Twin Peaks represents in 2017. So I think this week we'll probably forgo recommendations because it's already getting pretty late and this podcast has already gone on long
I
enough.
also got nothing. So.
Yeah, good. But yeah, if you want to reach out to us about anything Twin Peaks related, about this movie or about the return coming up, email us at rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at rewatcherspod. And we will just plan on seeing you. Well, hopefully we'll do a little bonus episode this week, talk about the missing pieces and some secret history stuff, and then dive into The Return. But until then, signing off, this is Tyler Harris.
Mitchell Marshall.
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer.
Gobble, gobble.
Bye.